Hi, this is Ben Anand, and this is Modern DJ Musings video number 5. I'm starting here on my YouTube screen to thank my new subscribers, which brought me up to 25. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do that now. That'll help me a lot. Also, if you want any of the links for Modern DJ Musings written blog or my website, just check the description for those, please. The other reason I wanted to start on my YouTube page this week is because I really want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch last week's videos. This is a part 2 of a 3-part series, and it will be helpful for you to watch last week if you want to get the whole series. Now, if you don't have a lot of time, then maybe consider just viewing the screen recording version, because that's the shorter version, whereas this one is more explanation. So last week what I covered was the process of looking for music and buying music using 2 sites, Beatport and Crates. And this week we continue that process, assuming you've now downloaded your music. Where does it go from there? How do you get it onto your into your computer, onto iTunes, onto Rekordbox, and finally out to your USB? That's what I'll be detailing here. So go ahead and go to Beatport here, and after you've purchased a track, you'll get the screen that says thank you for your order. I only purchased 1 track here because this is just an example, and I purchased many tracks last week. So if I had purchased a lot of tracks, there would be a long list of tracks here. There would also be a long list of artists that I could follow that I'm not following already, and a list of labels as well. Just like the label has the follow button, and I don't follow many labels, so I'm not going to do that, the artists will also have a follow button. The reason there's not one here is because I already followed this one artist, and there's no remixer or anything. It's original track, so there aren't any other artists for me to follow from this purchase. But again, you'll probably be purchasing multiple tracks, and you'll have artists to consider, labels to consider, and don't forget to take that time. I know it's exciting to get your new tracks, but you also want to explore some of these artists and decide if it's someone you do want to follow and have in your stream every time you look for tracks on Beatport or Crates. So that said, over here it says downloaded because I already downloaded the track in an earlier version of the video that I wasn't quite happy with. So normally it would just say download. You'll notice this box here to download all, and if you can get that to work, then great. I've never gotten it to work for my laptop or my iMac, so I don't even bother with it. I just download manually. What that means is I have to click where it says download. I wait a few seconds, I click the next one, I wait a few seconds, I click the next one. And I'm going to repeat that process for about 6 tracks at a time. After clicking on 6 of the download buttons, I'm going to wait for them all to download. There will be a progress bar down below, and I'll wait till they completely download and then select the next 6 tracks and repeat that process till I've got everything. If you go too fast, it'll start getting confused depending on your internet download speed and your computer processor speed. It could get confused and not download certain tracks, and that'll actually waste time later trying to find out what did download correctly and what you're missing. So just go slow on this and download a few at a time, or if you're lucky enough to figure that out, then great. So now that you've downloaded the track, it is on your computer, but where? To find out, on a Mac you use the Finder over here. The recents isn't always that accurate for me, so I'll go ahead and find downloads. There you can see that very most recent track that I bought, Sequence, but for this example I want to get multiple tracks in a playlist, so I'll use the tracks that I downloaded last week for this exercise, and I recorded a mix actually as well. We'll get to that later. But if I select the first track at the top of the list by clicking, and then shift and click the bottom track, it will select those 2 tracks and everything in between. Now when I double click this, because iTunes is my default music application, then it's going to automatically copy them into iTunes. And I do mean copy, as in you're going to have 2 of each of these tracks, one living in this downloads folder and one living in the folders that iTunes creates for you. So you will want to delete these from your downloads section eventually, because your computer only has so much space and you don't want multiple copies of the same thing on it. But before you delete, it's a good idea to save these into a folder and then drag that folder onto an external hard drive so you have this backed up. If anything happens to your computer and the data becomes unrecoverable, by backing this up onto an external hard drive, you won't lose all those tracks. So recommend always backing up because you can have really horrific results later if you don't. Anyway, so clicking on these will bring them into iTunes. So going next to iTunes, and I need to go back up here to the song view. Now over in the song view, I can find these tracks, again clicking on the top one, and again shift click on the bottom one. That selects all the tracks that I want. And what I'm going to do next is control right click, add to playlist, and we're going to add to a new playlist in this case. This playlist I'm going to leave unnamed for now. I'll just keep playlist 6 by hitting return. And I don't like this view because to me this album art just doesn't help me at all, and what it does is it spaces out the tracks, so I can't really see very many. I can't even see 20 of them. I can only see 19 in this view. So I'm going to change the view by going up to View at the top and View as Songs. I wish I could find a way to make this the default for iTunes, but I have not figured that out yet. Please leave a comment if you figured that out yet, how to change the default view in iTunes. As far as I know, it's impossible, and you have to do this manually every time. But the advantage is this is much cleaner to look at, and I can see 45 tracks at a time, which is kind of a normal playlist for me. If I only have 20 tracks, it's not going to be much more than an hour for me when it's actually mixed. Even though the tracks are longer, I'm not using all of them. So I'm going to go through quite a few tracks in a 2-hour set, enough that I always want my playlist to be at least 40 tracks, and I want to be able to see them all on one screen. So that's why I choose this view. And now that we have that view selected, the other thing about this playlist is the organization is random, meaning that it just brought them in some kind of random order to iTunes from whatever order it had imported them. And so you'll see that, for example, the BPM is all over the place here. And I like to organize the tracks by BPM because that's kind of a natural starting point when we record a practice mix, from lowest BPM to highest. I can click here to change the view, and that'll 2 times show me the view from lowest BPM to highest. But please note that hasn't changed the order of the playlist. It just changed what you're looking at. Over here shows you the order of the playlist. It looks like a blank box, but it's actually clickable. And this is again the order of the playlist, that random order where the BPMs are all over the place. So how can you change the order of the playlist? Well, you could manually drag them up in order, but that would take you a few minutes and not be very time efficient. So I'll show you a little shortcut as to what you can do here. Once again, click on the BPM to get the view in the right order. This time we're going to Command A to select all, since it's all in one folder, and I'm going to create another new playlist. And this time it's going to force them into the right order. This time I'm going to name this MDJM example, and I'm going to change that view again because it just can't stand it. View as songs. And that's what I like to be seeing there. Now you'll notice on this new playlist that it is organized by the order of the playlist, and that matches the order of the BPM. If I click on BPM, nothing's happened because it is exactly the same order that the playlist is actually in. You can also organize these, of course, by any of the other categories, which you might want to do at other times. But for now, I think we're done in iTunes because we have a playlist that says MDJM example and is in the order of BPM. Well, actually, there's one more thing you might want to do, and that is notice that that kind of got buried there. I have a lot of playlists, and if I'm going to be using this playlist again a lot, or like dragging new tracks into it later once I've gone through this experiment, whatever, whatever, then I might want to have handy access to it and not have it buried all the way down here and have to go looking for it. So what I can do real quick is just click on it slowly, one time, not double click, and then I just put a little hyphen at the front. By doing that, it goes to the top of all the letters, and now it's right here, MDJM example. That hyphen is getting it right to the top here, and when I'm dragging tracks in later, that's going to be quite useful. So now I'm finished in iTunes. I have this MDJM example playlist in order of BPM, and I want to get this playlist next into Rekordbox. So we're going to open up Rekordbox here. There is Rekordbox. I'm going to close this playlist tab for now because it gets confusing having all those playlists. So you can see some of the different categories. What I need to do to get into iTunes playlists is click on the iTunes caret here. And this will show me all the playlists that existed in iTunes whenever I opened up Rekordbox. It's actually may or may not show me the one I want. Actually, it doesn't. I'm looking for -MDJM example, and it's not there because I created it since I loaded up this iTunes folder. Get in the habit of just clicking this reload button here, and then it's going to go back into iTunes and pull out whatever new information there is. That could be a new playlist that you made, or it could be an existing playlist that you changed the order or added or deleted tracks from, and you're going to save yourself a lot of hassle and confusion by just getting in the habit of always refreshing that so that you know that you have the most current information reading in from iTunes. So here we have that playlist. I like to do this in a couple of steps. The first thing I want to do is control right click and actually import this playlist. And I did this in an earlier example. I'm going to go ahead and replace it with this new one so I don't get confused. Now I'm going to click down the playlists and click down the iTunes, so I'm back to reasonability. Then I'll go to only playlists. These are the playlists that exist in Rekordbox and not iTunes. And now I should have that new playlist already in here. There we go. And we can see it is the right playlist in the right order. The only thing you'll maybe be confused by is looking at the BPM, that seems to be out of order. And there's a reason for that, and that is that these first 3 tracks are actually ambient tracks. And ambient means they have no beat at all. So they can't be 125 beats per minute because there are no beats. It's really no beats per minute because there are no beats. So what I've done is in iTunes, I went back and I reassigned those BPMs manually, which you can do by kind of clicking right-click and get song info is the way to do it, and then you can change this BPM in the box. I'll just change it to 63. And now it's changed it in iTunes, but keep in mind that doesn't work in Rekordbox because that's the one that's actually reading the BPMs. Anyway, why did I choose 63? I chose 63 because it's half of the number that it was assigned incorrectly. Really, again, it has no beats. But I just halved this from 125 to 63 because that'll tell me that it's a slow track with no beats, and that way when I'm trying to look for it later and I'm searching by BPM in my iTunes, it's not going to say 125 in iTunes, which would confuse me because that's like a house and techno BPM and not an ambient or downtempo BPM. So that's why I do that little workaround there. Unfortunately, it hasn't carried into here and it says 125, but rest assured this is the correct order of the tracks ordered by BPM that we did in iTunes before. There's one thing left to do here, and that is to get this onto my USB. So right now I am connecting my USB to an available port. It will take a minute to load, depending on how fast and how new this USB is. I skip the MyTag thing because I don't use it, and it just confuses me to get those messages, but I just click through them like that. Now that I have my USB, you can see that it's there under devices. Notice that I've named it Benanand 19. This is Benanand 2019. The reason that I named it like this is because if someone happens to find my USB because I carelessly left it at my gig, or Maybe another DJ carelessly took my USB instead of theirs. Maybe they looked exactly the same. A lot of these USBs do look exactly the same. So for whatever reason, I lost my USB and now somebody else has it. And they're going to have no idea whose USB is because there's many DJs at the party. And it's going to give them extra work to get it back to me, which I do not want them to have extra work. I want them to get it back to me. So that's why I name it with my name, because instantly when they put this in, they can see it's someone else's. They can see that it's mine. And hopefully they'll do the right thing and contact me and get this in the mail to me so I didn't lose my USB. That's why I've named this as I did. Anyway, you can click the caret here and you can see. I'm not sure if I've done this in this example. I don't think yet. So you can see the different playlists that exist on it. I think I did this in an earlier example, so just to show you what to do. In this playlist here in Rekordbox, control right click, export playlist, and now you can select that USB since it's loaded. It's going to say it already exists. Do you want to replace this list? That won't happen to you if you're importing for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, so we have the most recent version. Now it does export very quickly to my USB because all of my tracks are already on it. So any kind of new playlists I make with tracks that are on my USB, they don't take time to copy onto the USB because the tracks are already there. That'll be almost instant. Now, if you are dealing with 20 new tracks that you've never loaded into Rekordbox, then it's going to take a little more time when you're importing that playlist, and it's going to take more time when you're exporting it to the USB because it does have to physically copy that file. And this is where the speed of your USB, whether it's using USB 3.0 or 2.0, how much storage space it has on it, those things can factor in to make this experience faster or slower. Also, when you try to load information on a playlist, that tends to take a little more time to read from the USB. And so if you have a really slow USB, this can be frustrating and take a long time. So try not to work with a slow USB. It's worth investing a little money in a good USB. It's not going to be more than $20, $30, but just do your research on which USBs have good reviews, because if they have bad reviews, it's for a reason, and you don't want your USB to fail at a gig. Certainly, you don't want it to be really slow when you're rushing to get your playlists onto your USB before your gig or whatever. So go ahead and make sure you're using a high quality USB. Do your homework on that one. So now we have this playlist onto the USB, and we're actually ready to take this to our CDJ and start mixing. That'll be next week's lesson though. Last thing to do before you remove your USB physically out of the port, make sure you click this eject button to remove it and not get any cryptic warnings about damaging information. Usually your information's not damaged, but it's better not to take chances with that kind of thing. Now I'm free to take my USB out and plug it into my CDJ, which again we'll cover on next week's lesson. Just going to take you back for the close here, back to my YouTube channel. Again, I really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can see the videos I've posted in the last few weeks here. Don't forget to look in the description for links to my other sites and iterations of modern DJ musings. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.